Airline Pilot Guy, episode 105, is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/airlinepilotguy. Over 150,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Airline Pilot Guy, episode 105.
Flight 209, you are cleared for takeoff. Roger. LA, good morning. 123.9.
Roger. Being less connected. Over.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from my side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 1008 in the Rosen Plaza Hotel in Orlando, Florida. In this episode, an Ethiopian co-pilot hijacks his own flight, a Nepal Airlines Twin Otter crashes in Nepal, a United flight encounters severe turbulence en route to Billings, Montana. More news and feedback. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seatbacks in their upright and locked positions, electronic devices powered on. Flight 105 is ready for pushback. Greetings, all of you aviation enthusiasts, geeks, and what was the other term I was going to look for? Buffs, you aviation buffs, you. For those who are interested in the airline aspect of aviation, I'm your guy, Captain Jeff. I'm a line captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier, which I call Acme Airlines. And I've been doing this now for a little over 25 years, and before that I was in the Air Force. So all told, I have about 32 years of flying experience or so. Oh, wow. Tell you what a difference a week makes. Here I am, Tuesday, the 18th of February, in beautiful sunny Orlando, Florida, where the temperature, by the way, is about 80 degrees, 81 degrees outside. And I'm missing it. I need to be out there walking around right now. But I get to experience Orlando quite a bit on this trip. I'm going to be back here again tomorrow. My son, as you know, goes to school here in the Orlando area. And a little bit busy with classes today. I'm going to meet with him tomorrow afternoon when I lay over here again. And let's see, on Thursday we end up in Tampa, Florida. And then finally home on Friday. Hope to get out to California this weekend to visit my mom and my sister. And then back again, back from California most likely on Monday, and then this trip again on Tuesday through Friday of next week. Which brings me to the point of perhaps another meetup, this time in Orlando, Florida. So for those of you listening, if you'd like to get together and hang out with some fellow aviation geeks, you could do that next Tuesday. I'm just making the official pronouncement right now. I've been thinking about it, and I think that this would be a good thing to do. Let's make it, next week, next Tuesday, the 25th of February, starting at, let's say, 4:30, 5 o'clock or so, at the Brick House Tavern. Let me pull up the information here, which is where I'm going to go today to do my research, of course, to enjoy a nice cold beverage and some appetizers. They have a happy hour on Tuesdays, 3 to 6 p.m., and you can experience the Brick House Tavern and Tap. Specials include $1 cans, $2 domestic drafts, $3 import drafts and wells, and $4 house wines and specialty imports. And all appetizers are $5. So pretty good deal. Again, that's the Brick House Tavern and Tap, located 8440 International Drive, Orlando, Florida. Next Tuesday. Unless, of course, I don't make it and I get rerouted and I end up somewhere else, or we have another winter storm. All bets are off. But hey, those of you who live in the area, might be a fun time to get together with other fellow aviation enthusiasts. So there you go. that's what I wanted to say about that. And as Forrest Gump would say.
And that's all I have to say about that.
Exactly. Oh, you know what I need to do? I need to do this, of course. Talk about the coffee fund. Don't worry, I won't talk about it for too long. Coffee Fund is the place you can go to help support the show. And airlinepilotguide.com/coffee is the place to find out all about how you can contribute. A couple different ways. One, the old Coffee Fund Classic via PayPal. And since the last episode, 3 of you have contributed. Thank you very much. Jacob, Garrett, and Kevin. And the other way that I just started utilizing for those of you who want to contribute to my caffeine addiction fund is to go to patreon.com. And there's information about that in on the website, the Coffee Fund page of the website. And I just wanted to thank those who I've not yet thanked, and if I've forgotten your name, please let me know so I can formally thank you on the show. But as far as I can tell, new contributors or patrons are Horace or Joris, Julia, Dylan, Bjorn, and I believe that does it. So thank you, one and all, for your contributions. Much appreciated. Thank you. I love the it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup. All right. I love sweet and hot. All right. So, as promised, this week I'm going to try to just quickly hit some news items and then get to your feedback. So, let's start off by doing this. Well, no doubt you heard about this crazy thing that happened just a couple of days ago. An Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 767-300 performing flight 702 from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to Rome with 202 passengers was en route to Rome, estimated to land at the Fiumicino Airport at 4:40 local time in the morning, when an occupant forced the crew to divert the aircraft to Geneva. Well, hang on. Located about 380 nautical miles northwest of Rome, the crew activated the transponder code for unlawful interference while en route at flight level 360, almost over Khartoum in the Sudan. And while the aircraft flew straight towards Geneva, the airport of Geneva was closed, with a number of flights scheduled to land in Geneva needing to divert to Zurich. Security and emergency services prepared for the arrival of the aircraft. Fighter aircraft were dispatched to accompany the aircraft to landing. On approach to Geneva, the aircraft entered a holding pattern at 7,000 feet for about 30 minutes before landing safely on Geneva's runway 5 at about 6:02 local time. The first officer used the cockpit escape rope to leave the cockpit via the cockpit window. So, little interesting here. This Aviation Herald article says that the hijacker or an occupant forced the crew to divert the aircraft to Geneva. Well, it turns out that the person who actually hijacked the airplane was the first officer, the co-pilot. Apparently, the co-pilot waited for the captain to leave the cockpit, and apparently they don't have the same type of procedures that we have at Acme Airlines, where you would never, ever find anybody in the cockpit by themselves during flight. That just won't happen. We have procedures to make sure that we have at least 2 people in the cockpit at all times. And so the captain leaves the cockpit for a little bit of a break, probably a bathroom break, and the co-pilot locks the cockpit door, and you can do that by basically preventing anybody access. Once somebody has left the cockpit, you can close that cockpit door and deactivate the many different ways that you can access the cockpit through that cockpit door. I don't want to go into details because that's not something we want to be talking about on a podcast. But needless to say, once the captain left, the co-pilot made sure that the captain could not get back in. And apparently, this Ethiopian first officer felt threatened in his home country and requested political asylum in Switzerland. And so once the captain left the cockpit, the co-pilot started squawking the appropriate code for unlawful interference or hijacking, and that immediately alerted the radar air traffic controllers. And so I think he explained pretty quickly that he wasn't being forcibly hijacked by some terrorist, that it was him, in fact, who was hijacking the flight to proceed to Geneva. Let's see. Radio communication recordings of Geneva approach frequency reveal that the first officer requested asylum on approach frequency with 35 minutes of fuel remaining, was offered several times to join the localizer and land at Geneva, however delayed landing waiting for response for Swiss authorities. The approach controller convinced the first officer to join a right-hand holding pattern at the final approach fix on the localizer for runway 5. The controller repeatedly telling the first officer that they were trying their best to wake up officials to get a response. Finally, the controller told the first officer that they had somebody on the phone and were talking to him, not yet having a final response, offering that the aircraft could join the glide slope. The response would be provided while on short final, to which the first officer agreed. On a 7 nautical mile final, the first officer requested a 360, stating he was promised a reply on short final. In the end, the controller cleared the aircraft to land on runway 5. The reply would be provided on very short final, promised the tower controller. The aircraft landed about 5 minutes later without a reply, about 31 minutes after reporting on approach frequency. On request by approach control, the aircraft taxied to the end of the runway and stopped. The first officer radioed he would now leave the aircraft through the window, and apparently hoping that he would receive some kind of a hero's reception. And he did receive a reception, but it was not a hero's reception. I think they arrested him and took him off. Now, haven't heard an update on this, but all I can say is that this man is going to be in a lot of trouble for unlawful interference, basically holding 202 passengers and crew members hostage, basically kidnapping them or hijacking them. I think that Switzerland was pushing for extradition and not going to give this guy asylum. And if this guy is returned to Ethiopia, I think his life is going to not be very good for the rest of it. So we'll keep you up to date on any updates or news about this incident. But that's a new one. You know, I've seen instances where crew members have taken the life of fellow crew members and actually crashed airplanes, like that episode a few months back over Africa where an RJ captain basically locked his first officer out of the cockpit and proceeded to crash the airplane. I think that airlines that don't have the policy that we have at Acme and other U.S. airlines may want to reconsider their policies when it comes to leaving the cockpit with only one occupant, because you never know what could happen. Let's see. This is sad. A Nepal Airlines de Havilland DHC-6-300 Twin Otter, flight 183 from Pokhara to Jumla in Nepal with 15 passengers and 3 crew, departed Pokhara at 12:43 local time, but radio contact lost about 30 minutes later while the aircraft attempted to divert to another airport. The aircraft did not arrive at Jumla at the estimated time of arrival or Bhairahawa Airport. I know I didn't pronounce that right. A search was initiated, though it was hampered by weather. Local residents reported a burning object, and a helicopter located the burning wreckage of the aircraft in the jungles near Kedim, about 40 nautical miles southwest of Pokhara and about 25 nautical miles north of another name that I cannot pronounce. All on board were killed. And right now they're investigating why the aircraft ended up crashing. They don't know if it impacted the terrain or if there was some kind of an in-flight breakup. But let's see, there was something here about the crew reporting that they were picking up some pretty heavy icing, and so that may have something to do with the crash. All right, and this just happened yesterday. A United Boeing 737 operating flight 1676 from Denver, Colorado to Billings, Montana, with 114 passengers and 5 crew, were descending towards Billings about 15 minutes prior to landing when the crew declared an emergency, reporting a flight attendant had been badly injured when the aircraft experienced severe turbulence. The flight attendant was bleeding very badly, and they couldn't stop it. Medical services were requested to meet the aircraft at the gate. Upon contacting Billings approach frequency, the crew indicated that they did not have the ATIS and requested approach to read the weather information, subsequently opting for a landing on runway 28 right. At 13:21 local, the aircraft touched down safely on runway 28 right about 15 minutes after declaring the emergency and taxied to the gate. The airline reported that 3 crew and 2 passengers were injured when the aircraft encountered severe turbulence near Billings. All but 1 flight attendant were released from the hospital later that evening. Let's see. A passenger reported the aircraft had just left cruise level when the aircraft seemed to drop sharply, sending loose items in the cockpit and flight attendants to lift off. 1 flight attendant hit the cabin ceiling very hard, causing the panel to crack. Then everything came down again onto the floor. A parent holding her baby in her arms could not hold the baby, which lifted off too, but did not seem to have received injuries. According to the FAA radar data, the aircraft had been en route at flight level 380, initially descending to flight level 340, about 225 nautical miles south of Billings, subsequently showing some level deviations at flight level 340, descending further to flight level 320, again showing some level deviations, before starting the descent towards Billings. All right, so one more article I wanted to read about that. This one is from the USA Today, and it says Carrie Mullins had just taken a picture of the clear blue skies over Montana moments before she says she experienced the scariest 25 seconds of her life. Mullins from Arvado, Colorado, was aboard United Flight 1676 from Denver to Billings when it hit turbulence so severe that people were tossed from their seats. I thought, wow, yeah, this is it. It's the most helpless feeling ever, to just be sitting there and not have any control over anything. Mullins said the plane turned sharply to the right and started plunging. Everything flew out of everybody's hands, she said. It was quite surreal. Mullins said some passengers weren't wearing seatbelts, and they hit the ceiling. Okay, you know how I feel about this. When the plane finally stabilized, passengers began handing items back to each other that flew around the cabin, like phones and wallets. Let's see. So, that's all we have so far on this incident. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say about this particular article was that this lady, Mullins, said she didn't hear the pilot make any announcement about the incident. Here's a quote from her. "I thought it was very interesting that the pilot never came on and said anything about what had happened. There was nothing." Okay, now if that's true, again, and you've heard me say this before, communication is so important from pilots to passengers. And if the captain or the captain's designee did not make a PA to the occupants of that airplane, I say shame on you. I know you're busy up there. I know you've had an airplane almost go out of control. I know I know you have a medical episode going on, a flight attendant severely injured and bleeding badly. But still, you need to calm the nerves of everybody that just experienced that event at some point. And if it is really true that you never got on the PA and said anything, shame on you. Come on, let's communicate. Now, what happened? Is it just regular clear air turbulence? Is it perhaps something that went wrong with the airplane, the autopilot system, perhaps? Or was it something like mountain wave turbulence? I kind of tend to believe that that is most likely what happened in this case. I know that there were reports west of the mountain ranges during that time of some pretty bad mountain wave turbulence. If you're wondering what mountain wave turbulence is, I'm reading from the National Oceanic, and let's see, what's the NOAA stand for? National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, basically the Weather Service in the United States. They put out a newsletter every so often. This one is dated November 2011, and the newsletter is entitled The Front. And the article is by James Reynolds, a meteorologist in charge in the Center Weather Service Unit in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the title is The Hidden Dangers of Mountain Wave Turbulence. With the onset of fall, strong westerlies, the prevailing winds blowing from the west on the poleward sides of the horse latitudes, never heard of horse latitudes, are beginning to develop across much of the country in response to the seasonal southerly shift of the jet stream. As winds become stronger aloft, mountain wave turbulence will develop more often and may cause significant damage to the structure of aircraft. And in this article, which I'll have a link in the show notes, there's a picture, and many of you probably have seen this picture, of a B-52H Stratofortress bomber that encountered mountain wave turbulence and lost its vertical tail on January 10th, 1964. And it's pretty impressive. All but just a little tiny portion of the vertical stabilizer is poking up. Most of it is gone. And again, that was structural damage caused by the mountain wave turbulence encounter. And so you can have structural damage and the resultant loss of control. General aviation pilots may also experience greatly reduced climb rates due to severe downdrafts generated by mountain waves. Because of their life-threatening effects, it is important to understand the often unseen hazards attributed to mountain wave turbulence. Though primarily a western United States problem due to the numerous tall mountain ranges in the region, mountain wave turbulence can occur in association with just about any sizable mountain or line of mountains. Mountain waves develop on the lee or downward or downwind side of mountains. These waves are generated when strong winds flowing toward the mountain in a generally perpendicular fashion are raised up over the mountains. As the winds rise, they may encounter a strong inversion or stable air barrier over the mountains that causes the winds to be redirected toward the surface. Instead of reaching back down to Earth, the winds continue in an up and down wave-like pattern downwind of the mountains that may extend for hundreds of miles. Mountain waves generally exist in smooth, undulating airflow and can be a benefit to glider craft operations. Conversely, however, mountain waves may contain strong, clear air turbulence in the form of breaking waves and rotors, which can be damaging to all sizes of aircraft. If the amplitude of the wave is large enough, the waves may become unstable and break away from the main flow, leading to turbulent breaking waves. And it goes on talking about this phenomenon, mountain wave. I'm sure that many of you listening, either riding as passengers out west or perhaps you pilots listening, may have experienced mountain wave turbulence. It's not a lot of fun, let me tell you. In fact, at Acme, if the mountain wave turbulence is severe enough or bad enough, we will actually be rerouted to avoid the area of mountain wave turbulence. So I suspect that that's what happened here because of the report from the Aviation Herald that air traffic control radar data showed that even while attempting to maintain level flight at flight level 380 and flight level 340, here, let me find the article again, descended to flight level 340 and then 320. So it looks like they're trying to find some smoother air, but they're having trouble maintaining the altitude. So that tells me that the turbulent air is quite significant. And then as they began their final descent is when they hit the very, very strong turbulence. Now, why the flight attendants were up? I don't know. Maybe the pilots told them to take their seats. And as so often is the case, when I tell flight attendants to take their seats, they ignore me and they continue doing their thing in the cabin. I don't know. That may have happened in this case. Or perhaps the pilots never warned the flight attendants to take their seats. So I hope that we'll find out more about this case because, as you know, because you listen to my show, the leading cause of injuries on flights is caused by turbulence and by not having your seatbelt fastened, not being seated with your seatbelt on. That's the best way to keep from being injured on an airplane. You never know when this is going to happen. So do I have a lot of sympathy for the people that were injured because they did not have their seatbelts on? No, I don't. You know, listen to your cabin crew, listen to your pilot crew when they tell you to put the seatbelt on. Okay? Thank you. All right. Let's see what else we have to talk about. Oh, you know what? Let's talk about something a little bit lighter and happier, shall we? Ah, I love that sound, don't you? While complimentary amenities for economy passengers continue to fade away, Alaska Airlines is bringing one of its most popular free treats to 2 routes in the northernmost state: free beer. Free beer. And not only free beer, but free good beer, starting March 3rd, when the airline's sister carrier, Horizon Air, begins flying 76-passenger Bombardier Q400 planes, or Bombardier, I should say, Q400s, between Anchorage and Fairbanks and Anchorage and Kodiak. Complimentary Alaskan-made microbrew will be offered. Microbrew. The beer, Old 55 Pale Ale, is made by the Silver Gulch Brewing and Bottling in Fox, Alaska, 10 miles north of Fairbanks, and will be as fresh as can be, said Lisa Luchow, Alaska Airlines Director of Onboard Food and Beverage. Silver Gulch will bring the beer down from Fairbanks to their facility at the Anchorage Airport and put it daily into environmentally friendly stainless steel growlers called clean canteens, which our caterers will pick up and load onto the flights. While cups of Silver Gulch beer will be served only as part of the new Horizon Air service in Alaska, complimentary Northwest wines and microbrews are served on most all Horizon flights longer than 40 minutes. So, hey, I like this idea. Hey, Acme, let's do the same thing. Well, you know what? It wouldn't benefit me, would it? I guess even if we were giving away beer in the back, I wouldn't be able to drink it. Yeah, oh well. Bad for me, good for you, you passengers out there. Okay, that's enough of the news. Let's move on to your feedback, shall we?
Captain, incoming message.
Okay, I'm going to pick up where we left off from last week's episode, and this is from Andres Skolte. I probably butchered your name, Andres, so sorry about that. Hi, Jeff. I'm an IFR-rated pilot working on my commercial now. Enjoy doing Pilots and Paws dog rescue flights. That's cool. That's very cool. I should probably call you up and interview you about Pilots and Paws. I bet the listeners would really enjoy hearing about that program. And was wondering how these large snowstorms affect you. Are you usually waiting it out at a hotel somewhere with time to relax? Or is it last-minute decisions by the dispatchers and your day is at the airport waiting? Same for a junior FO? Well, how timely your question is. And actually, I received this. He sent this on the 5th, a couple weeks ago here, almost a couple weeks ago. And since that time, we had that big snowstorm last week in the southeastern United States and up the eastern seaboard. And as you well know, I recorded my last podcast while in the midst of that weather, irregular operations, reroute, complete massacre of my scheduled flight or a scheduled trip. And so the answer is yes and yes. It depends. You may get lucky, as I did almost 3 weeks ago. We had that storm Tuesday through Friday, and I left Atlanta that morning. And you remember all the traffic mayhem in the Atlanta area because of the snow and the ice. And I left Atlanta before that hit, and I stayed away from Atlanta the entire trip. So by the time I returned on Friday, everything had pretty much recovered. Now, this last trip, last week, I was not so lucky. This 4-day trip that I had last week was going in and out of Atlanta. Just about every other leg was going through Atlanta, and guess what? Yes, the storm completely messed it up. Just to recap, the first day flew as scheduled, ended up in Indianapolis. The second day, I was supposed to fly 4 flights and end up in Charlotte, North Carolina, but stayed in Indianapolis most of the day, and that's when I recorded most of episode 104 last week, and then flew the last flight from Indianapolis to Atlanta Wednesday night, and then I was supposed to go on to Memphis, but that canceled because of other things going on, and so had a domicile layover, which means that since I'm based in Atlanta, I go home if I can. But as you know, I didn't go home because the roads were not really passable at that time, so I ended up getting a hotel just in the airport area. The next day was supposed to just do a one-leg deadhead to Austin, Texas, and we were in the midst of doing that, and then all of a sudden people were yelling at my co-pilot and I, telling us not to go anywhere because they needed us to fly back to Atlanta. So we did a quick change there, flew back to Atlanta, and then ended up with another domicile layover. This time, Thursday night, the roads were in good enough shape that I was able to make it home, and then came back in Friday morning to pick up what was left of the trip, which was just a turnaround to Kansas City and back. So the pilot lounge in Atlanta was more packed than I've ever seen it in my life. Lots of people down there not sure what to do, many of whom had trips canceled, flights canceled. They were kind of on the hook to determine whether or not they were going to be rerouted or assigned recovery flying. Some were just waiting around until their next flight occurred, a normal sit around. and it was a big mess. So you could, wait for decisions by dispatchers about what your day is going to be, or you could be at a hotel somewhere. And I was just talking with the co-pilot I'm flying with now, and he got a really good deal. He was down in, I think, Miami or Fort Lauderdale, and they said, basically, we're not going to have you do anything for a couple days. So he had like 48 hours or more off in South Florida. Good deal for him. So these things can either work out really well for you or really badly. So that is the way the weather affects us. So thank you, Andres, for your question. And let's move on with John Clem. You may remember a couple episodes ago I talked about the incident with, what's his name? Can't remember. Oh, yeah, Justin Bieber. How could I forget? Smoking pot on his privately chartered flight, and the pilots having to wear oxygen masks because the smoke was so thick. John writes, I guess there are no regulations about smoking on private aircraft. Bummer if these pilots lose their license to fly because of secondhand pot smoke. Is it safe for a pilot to pilot an aircraft having to wear an oxygen mask the entire time? Yeah, it's safe, but it's not comfortable, for sure. And if I were them, once I descended, I would probably try to depressurize the airplane, when you're below 10,000 feet, and try to clear everything out. I don't know if that's what they did or not. Don't know a lot of the details there, but I'm sure they're not going to lose their job because of this incident, because it's very well publicized. Okay, let's listen to Renato, who is a professional airline pilot. I believe he flies the Airbus 3 series, the 320 series, and he sent me this audio feedback.
Jeff, Renato here. I just wanted to give you some feedback on something that you've said repeatedly on your podcasts about flying the backside of the clock and flying international trips every week, and how you would not like that. And I have actually been flying those trips for 4 years now. First on the Airbus, and now I'm on the Boeing 777. And I can tell you that even though I love the overnights, I love the destinations that I go to, and I love the airplanes I fly, I do not like spending 12 hours in an airplane or 10 hours in an airplane and, getting 2 hours of sleep in the bunk for the entire night. That is not fun, and that really takes a toll on your health and on your overall appearance, I guess, which translating means I look old now. I am looking forward to going back to the narrow body and flying shorter legs. I don't mind if I have to fly 5-6 legs a day, as long as I get at least 6 hours of sleep at night. But I agree with you. It's not easy to fly those long overnight trips to far away destinations. Thank you very much for the podcast. You do a great job, and keep it up. Take care, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Renato, and I was wrong. I was confusing Renato with somebody else who flies the narrow-body buses. Apparently, Renato's flying the big iron and the long-range flights, and he agrees that the going through all the time zones and long flights and not getting a lot of sleep really does age you. And so I'm glad that I'm not the only one that thinks that. Now, of course, you get these great layovers and everything, but is the trade-off worth it? I don't think so, and I'm thinking that Renato is starting to think the same thing. Thank you, Renato, again for your fantastic feedback. I always value you and your feedback. Steve writes, I just listened to episode 101 and have to comment about the Lufthansa 747 in Bangor. The stop is not made for fuel alone. Many aircraft being sent to Pinal Air Park stop there to clear customs. Oh. Some fly nonstop to Tucson and once in a while to Phoenix. And you mentioned that it was an older model that may not have had the range. You were correct to dismiss that. The aircraft was a -400 which could easily make the flight nonstop. Okay, I thought so. Thank you for confirming that, Steve. And, I didn't even think about the fact that they made the stop in Bangor just to clear customs. And I have a feeling also it had something to do with maybe making that low approach at that airport on their way over toward Tucson. So thank you for your feedback and helping me out with that question, Steve. Okay, Tom sent some audio feedback. Let's listen to Tom.
Captain Jeff, this is Tom from Columbia, Missouri. Thank you so much for your podcast. I am proud to say that after listening to episode 99, I am your first supporter through Patreon. Didn't realize that when I signed up for it, but you mentioned it on the last show, and just when I went in to make a donation to the coffee fund, I thought that was a neat way to support your podcast. So thanks for mentioning that. Started listening to you about episode 90, and I have really enjoyed going back and working on getting caught up. I'm up to, I think, episode 33. Really enjoyed episode 32, where you spent some time going into detail about the L-1011. That L-1011, as a passenger, I'm not a pilot, but as a passenger over the years, that was my favorite plane to fly on, and I got to fly on the L-1011 multiple times with Delta and TWA, and I think maybe even Eastern Airlines once or twice. I was able to get on an L-1011. And the fact that you spent some time in that airplane and some of the stories you've shared about it have been really enjoyable. Someday, maybe you'll fly to Kansas City, and it'll be a place we can connect, take you to get some good barbecue and conversation, and also at the Aviation History Museum, which is at the downtown Kansas City airport. They have an L-1011 on display. That L-1011 it's a retired TWA L-1011. After TWA was done with it, it actually went to the Saudi royal family. They used it for one of their private jets for a while. After that, it went to a boneyard in Roswell, New Mexico, and somebody bought it and donated it to the Airline History Museum. The Airline History Museum is really a TWA museum. It's mainly staffed by volunteers who are retired TWA employees, and somebody donated that airplane to them, and it took them 2 or 3 years to get some engines. Somebody let them use some engines. They put the engines on it, got a certificate to fly that plane up to the Kansas City airport, the downtown airport, on a Saturday, and I think that was 3 or 4 years ago. And I was fortunate enough to go down there and watch that plane land on its last flight. Now, since it's been down there, they still don't have it open for public tours, but they have come in, they've taken the engines off of it, and I think what they're eventually going to do with it is make it like a classroom where they can take kids and do some aviation type classes and history lessons and things like that. But that museum is really a cool place. They have a Constellation that's on display. They have a DC-3 that is just about ready to be airworthy again. The Constellation, I think, for a while was airworthy, and I think it's going under. I think they're doing some more restoration to it now. But it's really a neat place, and maybe someday, if you get into Kansas City early enough, I'd be happy to take you down there and show you around that museum. And with some legwork ahead of time, could probably get you on that L-1011, especially since you used to fly one. But anyway, the one question I have for you, I'm a big aviation geek, and one of the things I do when I fly is I keep track of the tail numbers of the planes that I travel on. And over the years, it's interesting to see that I've been on the same plane a few different times. And it's even been like from different destinations. So that's, I don't know, it's probably kind of weird that I track that, but it's just something I like to do. And then I like to, when I'm bored, I'll look at those tail numbers and flight aware and kind of see where those planes have been. And it's just kind of a neat thing to do. So my question is for you, do you keep track of the planes you fly? I know there's a limited number of planes that you have access to. Since you're an MD-88 pilot, chances are you've probably flown just about every one in the fleet. But do you look at those tail numbers and you say, oh, wow, this is that dog that I don't like. Maybe it doesn't handle as well as another one. Do you have favorites? Or do they all just feel the same? I didn't know if it was like a car, that some cars handle differently than others, or is that something you just don't even pay attention to? So anyway, thanks again, Captain Jeff. I look forward to continuing to listen to your podcast. The bad part is I'm up to episode 33, I believe, when I'm going back and hearing all the old episodes. The bad part of that is I'm going to run out of episodes at some point, and then I'm going to have to wait for a new one like everybody else, and I'm not looking forward to when that happens. So thanks again for what you do. Thanks for sharing your love of aviation with us, and it's a neat experience to hear your stories and kind of live your life with you as you share it with us. And it's kind of neat to be part of that family. So look forward to meeting you someday. And thanks again.
Well, thank you, Tom. By the way, what kind of vehicle were you in? It sounded like a huge engine, was that an earth mover or something? Or a big diesel engine? It sounded really, really powerful. Anyway, thank you for being the proto-Patreon patron and supporting my coffee fund. I do appreciate that. And Kansas City, yeah, one of these days, we'll get together. I know that there are several listeners in that area who I'd like to do a meetup with sometime, and would love to go out to that museum where that L-1011 is. And if you could get me on that airplane, that would be just amazing. That would be fun. So thank you for that and reminiscing about the L-1011. And now to your question about keeping track of tail numbers and different planes. I don't know what the exact number is, but we have over 100 MD-88s in our fleet and somewhere upwards of 60 MD-90s, somewhere around that. I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but we have quite a few of these airplanes. And honestly, just speaking for myself, no, I don't keep track of the individual registration tail numbers of the airplanes. I don't really even... The only time I ever, make sure that I look at the ship number or tail number is when I'm looking at the logbook and I'm looking at my paperwork to make sure that they all match, because the Federal Aviation Administration kind of frowns upon operating an airplane with the wrong logbook or no logbook on board, or they frown upon operating an airplane without the appropriate paperwork to match that airplane. And I may have mentioned this story that in a past episode, but there was a point in my career as a co-pilot, a young co-pilot, years and years ago, hopefully beyond the statute of limitations, where I operated along with my captain and my flight engineer. We operated an airplane, from one place to another and didn't realize until we got to the destination that the airplane that we flew actually was not the one that we were supposed to fly. It was a different tail number. Now, it was the same airplane, the same kind of airplane. And, the captain thought that it was no big deal. However, the flight engineer and I decided that we thought it was kind of a big deal, and we had our captain talk to somebody about it. And when we met back up again for our next flight later that day, he said, "Oh yeah, it really is a big deal." But everything was taken care of, and so I always make sure from that point on that the tail number, the registration number of the airplane, matches the logbook and the paperwork, the flight plan, and everything else that you get. Because there are differences in the performance of individual airplanes, fuel consumption, weight, the center of gravity envelope is a little bit different. Very, very small differences, but there are differences. So is there any And that's the only time I ever make sure that I'm looking at the tail number. Otherwise, I don't look at ship 929 and go, oh yeah, that one. That one you got to be very careful with, when you're flaring, because it may not respond just like what you're expecting, or this one has a better roll rate than some of the others. It's just, no, I don't pay attention to that at all. And I think that for the most part, the behavior and flying characteristics of most of these airplanes are so similar that it doesn't really make any significant difference to me. Now, again, I'm only speaking for myself. Perhaps others who fly for Acme and fly all these different airplanes that I fly actually do make more of a mental note about a particular tail number and its peculiarities, but no, I don't really notice anything different. I more notice the way an airplane handles based on the weight of the airplane. I like really the airplanes when they're very heavy and they're getting close to their maximum takeoff weight are kind of fun to fly in that that you can fly them really smoothly because there's much more momentum that you have to work against when you're rolling and that kind of thing, and it tends to dampen things out quite a bit. Of course, it's also a lot of fun when you fly a very lightweight airplane, even when you're using the most reduced power setting possible for takeoff. Sometimes you feel like you're in a little rocket, so that's kind of fun too. So I hope that answers your question, Tom. Thanks so much for your feedback. Thanks for being a contributor, and thanks for bringing back memories of the L1011, and hope to share more reminiscences of the L1011 with you and others in the future. Okay, what I'm going to do, I know I've just started doing the feedback, but I'm going to pause and then resume, because I think right now it's getting close to 5 o'clock. There's an hour left in the happy hour at the Brick House. I need to go down there and make sure that this is going to be a good venue for the meetup next week. And after I do that, I'll come back and hopefully finish up the rest of this show. Now, this is only day one of a 4-day trip. Tomorrow I probably won't get a chance to do much because I'm meeting with my son. Thursday I'll be in Tampa, so maybe if I don't finish it up tonight, I'll finish it up in Tampa, and then hopefully have this thing out and published sometime by Friday night. So don't go anywhere, as I like to say. We'll be right back. Well, hello and welcome back. And as I mentioned, right before this little break, this little interlude, I was going to go and grab a bite to eat. Well, that was kind of an abrupt ending, wasn't it? I was going to try to grab a quick bite to eat and scope out the Brick House Tavern Plus Tap on International Drive in Orlando. That was 3 days ago, Tuesday. It's now Friday. Let me catch you up a little bit. I did come back, actually, after dining at the Brick House, and I recorded another 45 minutes or so. And again, the iPad video recording did not work, so I don't know if it's the app that I'm using or if it was some kind of operator error. I don't know. But honestly, wasn't very happy with that segment anyway, so I thought, no problem, I'll just re-record it. I'll do that probably not tomorrow, but maybe on Thursday. So, went to bed, and the next day we flew from Orlando to, I think we went to Kennedy the second day. Yeah, Kennedy Airport, and then back to Orlando. And then I met up with my son, who drove over. He's going to school at UCF. And we went to dinner, and then we went and saw a movie. And the movie we saw is entitled 12 Years a Slave. which has been nominated for an Oscar for Best Picture, Best Motion Picture of the Year, and they've also been nominated for several other Oscars. I think a total of 8 or 9 nominations for that, and they won the Best Motion Picture Drama at the Golden Globes this year. So, my son, being a film student, wanted to see the movie, and all the other ones that I hadn't seen at the theater across the street from the hotel were ones that he had already seen. So I thought, yeah, we'll see this one. Kind of depressing movie, but it was a very powerful one. It tells a good story based on a true story, and I highly recommend it. But if you're looking for something that is going to leave you happy, smiling, and whistling as you leave the theater, don't see this one. So anyway, we did that, and then the next day I flew from Orlando to New York's LaGuardia Airport, and then ended up in Tampa. And I'm starting to feel run down at this point. I'm thinking, well, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I set everything up, all my recording equipment and everything in the room, and I just ran out of gas. I just didn't have the energy to record anything, and so I thought I'm just going to try to get. And plus, we had to. Our pickup in the morning was 4:05, which meant that I have to get up around 3 o'clock in the morning, and didn't have a lot of time to do much else besides get something to eat and then hit the sack. So fast forward, not that much, to this morning, Friday morning, the 20th. Oh, by the way, also on Thursday the 20th, the National Transportation Safety Board here in the U.S. Had a hearing regarding the UPS, I think 1354 crash in Birmingham in, when was it, November, something like that, sometime last year. And they released the cockpit voice recorder tape transcript. Read through a little bit of that. I intend to do a little bit more in-depth reading and analysis on that. So I'll do that probably on another episode. But Friday this morning, flew from Tampa really early, 5:30 departure, to Atlanta, and got to had the opportunity to fly through a line of weather, which had already passed through Atlanta, and it was extending all the way from the Gulf Coast through the western Florida Panhandle, through southern Alabama, through central Georgia, all the way up. I don't know how far north it went, but we had to find a weak spot in that line and make it through. And of course, leaving at 4:30 or 5:30 in the morning, it's dark. Landing in Atlanta about 6:30. 6:30 or so. Dark. And you're flying early, and you've completed your first flight, and it's still dark. It's still night. You're flying early. So then we headed over to our new gate. No, actually, we got to keep the airplane, and we were going to head up to Philadelphia and back. And I noticed that the weather was kind of skosh in Philadelphia. We did a automatic landing check on our systems because we thought we might have to use it in Philadelphia. And I looked at the operational information service, the fly.faa.gov/OIS page, to see if there were any ground delay programs or ground stops at that point going into Philadelphia. And there was not an active one yet at that point, but they anticipated enacting a ground delay program shortly. And so from what I could tell, it was going to be anywhere from about 15, 20 minutes later than our original scheduled departure time out of Atlanta. So we rolled off the ramp, started heading out to the runway, and of course the tower controller said, "Oh, it looks like we have a ground delay program in effect." Yeah, we were expecting that. So they had us kind of go all the way to the end of the runway, out of the way of everybody else. And and await our wheels up time. And then they said, oh, looks like, no, now they just switched over from a ground delay program to a ground stop program. And so we need you to move into a different spot. So we went between the runways on the mid complex in Atlanta, between 27 right and 27 left, and awaited the word from air traffic control to see when we were going to start making our way to Philadelphia. And as time went on, started getting some communication from our dispatcher saying that looked like no airplanes were making it in because the runway visual range readings, the RVR readings, were pretty low. In fact, below the lowest approach that could be used at that time. Now, they do have a Category 3 approach up there, but for some reason, some of the equipment is not working, so Category 3s were not in effect. They were the lowest approach minimums they were using were for a Category 2 approach, which is essentially somewhere between 1,200 and 1,000 RVR, depending on the approach installation and your qualifications. And the RVRs were dipping down from 800 to 600. So it was clear that the visibility was not good enough for anybody to land. And in fact, several people had attempted but didn't break out, had to divert. And so they kept extending the ground stop program. In the meantime, a couple passengers were telling our onboard leader, flight attendant, that they didn't want to go because their meetings, now they weren't going to make their meeting or their meetings in Philadelphia, so they would they wanted to go back to the gate. So we're kind of negotiating with them regarding that. Of course, I can't keep somebody on the airplane against their will, so we tried to get an idea of how serious they were about doing that, so we started to think it got to be about an hour after our scheduled or actual pushback time, and then an hour and a half, giving a lot of PAs explaining to the passengers what was happening. And Jason and I, my first officer, and I started doing some what ifs and hypotheticals and calculations, trying to figure out if we were going to be able to even do this. Now, we had blocked out, we taxied out to the runway and then between the runways, and even though we had shut down our engines, we were still technically on the clock. And so that was counting as our actual flying time. And so we had already flown one flight, and then we were in the midst of doing this ground stop, ground delay thing. And then if we were going to get it released, we're going to fly up to Philadelphia. That was going to be another certain amount of time. And then after that, another certain amount of time. And based on our report time and the new FAR 117 rules, a maximum of 8 hours actual flying time, not just scheduled flying time, but actual flying time, is the rule. And you can't extend it. You are drop dead at 8 hours, unless you've already started a flight. Obviously, you're not going to stop working because you've exceeded your actual 8 hours of flying. But if you know you're going to exceed it, or you have a pretty good idea that you will, you're not allowed to initiate that last flight. So we're going through all these calculations, and we're figuring that if we didn't get back to the concourse by about 10:24 in the morning, that we weren't going to be able to do this turnaround to Philadelphia. Now, there's another calculation for the FAR 117 rules, maximum duty day. Again, 4:30 report time, 3 segments, and an unaugmented crew, which meant that our maximum duty period was 10 hours, which means that we'd have to be back in Atlanta by 2:30 in the afternoon. But we can extend that one up to 2 hours. So looked like that one wasn't going to be a factor. And then the third thing that was a factor was the 3-hour tarmac rule, that was enacted by Congress here in the United States to prevent, holding passengers hostage for more than 3 hours. And if you did that, then you were heavily fined by the FAA. And again, at this point, we were only about halfway through that 3-hour time frame, so that wasn't really a factor at this point either. But the one that was the factor was the 8 hours actual flying time. So we finally realized when they extended the ground stop program for another hour that this wasn't going to work out for us. So we decided to head back to the gate, got a new gate, and at some point there, we received word from our Acme crew tracking folks saying that the first officer and I were basically released. So, hey, that was a good news. So, before noon, we were let go from our trip. We were officially over. Trip was finished. So, there you go. That catches you up to Friday. Now, I must tell you, I got home and I had to take a nap because I was just, as I said, feeling really run down. I don't know if I'm coming down with something or whatever, and I know that I have to, after I record another podcast tomorrow morning, Catholic weekend, I'm going to head out to the airport and fly to California and spend some time with my mom and my sister, and then I'll have to fly back on Monday to get ready for my trip that leaves on Tuesday through Friday next week. So, I took my nap, and I've been feeling groggy all day. Still don't feel anywhere near 100% right now. I don't know if you can tell by looking at me or hearing me that I'm just not 100%. I'm trying. But in fact, I came this close to saying, you know what? I'm not going to do any more recording of this podcast and just release it as is. But I felt that I owed it to you, my listeners and viewers, to try to do some feedback. So here we go. We're going to do that. Before I do the feedback, though, let's talk a little bit about Audible.com and the Audible trial. And you can find the details of the Audible trial by going over to www.audibletrial.com/airlinepilotguy. And again, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with their free 30-day trial. Again, go to audibletrial.com/airlinepilotguy. Now, would you like a suggestion for a free audiobook? Well, how about this? I was doing a little bit of research, and specifically for aviation-related books and audible books, and I stumbled across this one, The 747: Creating the World's First Jumbo Jet and Other Adventures from a Life in Aviation, by Joe Sutter, and read by Paul Bomer, the narrator. Let's play a little sample of this Audible.com book, The 747.
I was born in Seattle in 1921 and grew up thrilled by aviation. My friends all wanted to fly airplanes, but I set my heart on designing them. The futuristic flying machines I sketched as a boy would carry passengers in safety and comfort to the far continents, conquering oceans in a single flight. Little did I know I would grow up to realize these dreams. Starting at Boeing right after World War II, I participated in the design of this great U.S. company's pioneering 707 and other early jets.
Okay, so that's a little sampling of the book 747, Creating the World's First Jumbo Jet and Other Adventures from a Life in Aviation, the unabridged version. And if you'd like to, you could use that as your free audiobook download during that 30-day trial. And there are several more to choose from, over 100,000 to be exact. So check it out if you're interested by going to audibletrial.com/airlinepilotguy. Alrighty then, let's move on with our feedback.
Captain. Incoming message.
Now, actually, before we do that, a couple things have transpired since the recording of the news on Tuesday, and that is a little bit of further details released regarding a couple of the incidents that I had talked about earlier this week. And one of which is the Ethiopian Airlines Flight 702. The co-pilot basically hijacked his own airplane. And one of the things that has come out is some ATC audio. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a little bit of that, and then I'm going to make the entire clip available via download, and that'll be in the show notes. So here we go. Let's listen to a little bit. Now, I'm not sure why, but for some reason, the Ethiopian 702 flight is being referred to as Kilo Kilo 001. Maybe you'll have some idea of why they're calling it Kilo Kilo or KK 001. I don't know if that's something that the Swiss do when an airplane's hijacked. I don't know. But kind of had me scratching my head. But let's take a listen to this. And again, he's going to be referring to the Ethiopian flight as Kilo Kilo 001.
Kilo Kilo 001, bonjour. Kilo Kilo 001 is holding over course Victor Alpha Due Alpha Sierra Sierra Yankee Lima uniform, ARP level 200 descending 160. Roger, Kilo Kilo 001, descend to flight level 100, report ready to start the approach. Roger, standing by level 100 and stand by for Alpha Sierra Sierra Yankee Lima uniform. And do you wish the Met report of Geneva or you have it? Say again? Do you wish Met report from Geneva? We have the SAS, thank you. Roger.
Okay, a little bit hard to understand exactly what they're saying, but if you would like to decipher it yourself, just look for that link in the show notes. And I do want to advance this. This thing's like a little over 10 minutes long. That's why I don't want to play the whole thing on the show. But right around the 3-minute, 10-second mark, I'm going to start it a little bit before that. The first officer mentioned something about an engine flaming out. And maybe I'm hearing this wrong, but it sounds to me like the fuel state got so low that one of the engines actually flamed out. So let's take a listen to that part of it.
Roger. And Kilo Kilo 001, we have one engine flame out now.
One engine flame out. Okay, so that's how low the fuel state was, apparently. Or maybe he was just making that up to try to expedite the process of gaining asylum from Switzerland. I'm not sure. Okay, the other thing that I thought was interesting regarding this, well, here, I found another article that gives a little bit more detail about what was going on in the 767-300. And let's see, where is that here? Okay. Let's see. It seemed, this is from abcnews.go.com. It seemed like a routine overnight flight until the Ethiopian Airlines jetliner went into a dive and oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling. Only then did the terrified passengers, bound for Italy from Addis Ababa, realize something was terribly wrong. The co-pilot had locked his captain from the cockpit. Okay, we knew about that. Commandeered the plane, headed for Geneva, where he used a rope to lower himself out of the window to ask for political asylum. Authorities now say that a prison cell is more likely. One passenger said the hijacker threatened to crash the plane if the pilot didn't stop pounding on the locked door. So I guess the captain was trying to get back in and pounding on the door. Another said he was terrified for hours Monday as the plane careened across the sky. Careened across the sky. That's what I do, I guess, when I'm flying. I'm careening. Here's a quote from Diego Carpelli, 45-year-old Italian. It seemed like it was falling from the sky. The jetliner carrying 200 passengers and crew took off. Oh, we already know that. Let's see. When it was over the Sudan, they sent a distress message that it had been hijacked. Once the plane was over Europe, 2 Italian fighter jets and later French jets were scrambled to accompany it. And let's see here. One passenger, Francesco Cuomo, told the Italian news agency ANSA that he and other passengers woke up shortly after midnight when the plane started to bounce. The pilot was threatening the hijacker to open the cockpit door and tried to knock it down without succeeding. Of course, that's the captain beating on the door. At this point, a message was transmitted by the loudspeakers in poor English, but the threat to crash the airplane was clearly understood. Oxygen masks then came down, making everyone on the plane very tense. Here's a quote from Italian passenger Paola Casale. "We got scared because we saw these oxygen masks come down, and the voice of the pilot, that usually is friendly and mellow, was cracking and worried, saying, quote, 'Breathe with the oxygen masks. Sit down.' Then the plane fell sharply 2 times. The co-pilot later threatened to take away passengers' oxygen if they tried to leave their seats." And here's a quote. Here's a passenger quoting the hijacker. And he says, "If you're not sitting down and belted, I'll take away your oxygen." So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I mentioned just a few sentences back or paragraphs back that at first Italian fighter jets were scrambled, and then when it made its way into French airspace, the French jets took over, intercepting the flight. And then when it made its way into Switzerland, the Swiss jets actually... No, wait a minute. No, there were no Swiss Air Force jets scrambled when the hijacked airplane came into their country because, and I can't... This is really hard for me to believe, because it was outside of normal office hours. Swiss fighter jets could not be scrambled when a hijacked Ethiopian passenger plane entered the country's airspace, as its Air Force only works daytime hours. And not only just daytime hours, but just Monday through Friday. Weekends and nights, nah. No Swiss fighter jets. Apparently they're trying to get funding so that they can operate 24/7, but apparently that's not a high priority in Switzerland. I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, please tell me if this is not true, because, you know, this is the media, and as we all know, the media, on occasion, doesn't get everything quite exactly right. So, just thought I'd mention all that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is the United Boeing 737 that encountered the severe turbulence and had several passengers and flight attendant crew injured, including one critically. I found or stumbled upon the audio for that. So let's take a listen to this. Again, I'll have the link in the show notes so you too can download it yourself and listen to it.
Back 441, contact departure with you.
Over to departure, start 441, thanks.
Charlie 4, Billings ground.
Okay, Charlie 4, I believe, is one of the crash fire rescue vehicles on the airport.
It's bleeding pretty badly and they can't get it to stop, so they're requesting a medical attention at the gate. Charlie 4, roger, and if you need it, it's going to be a United Boeing 737 that's inbound. Charlie 4, thanks.
Select approach, United 1676, 12,000.
That's the
1676, Billings approach. Afternoon, verify information, Juliet.
We do not have Juliet, United 1676. Can you read it to me?
Yep, winds 200 at 28, gust 36, altimeter 2961. We're advertising visual approaches to 28 right and 25.
Okay, we copy that. What was the first part you said before 25?
Visual approaches to 28 right and 25. The wind currently at Billings 200 at 29er, gust 36.
All right, thank you.
And altimeter 2962.
Okay. The reason why I wanted to play that was not only did they encounter that what I think was probably mountain wave turbulence or whatever, the severe upset. Now they're getting into Billings. They have medical emergencies going on in the back, including that flight attendant that was bleeding so badly that they could not stop the bleeding. Now they're coming in, and the weather at Billings is not very good. The winds are 200 degrees, so they're blowing from 200 degrees. Steady 29, gusting to 36 knots. So that's more than 40 miles per hour gusts. And 28 right is the 25 is one of the runways that they're using, but it's only 5,500 feet long, something like that. And 28 right is it's much longer. I think it's around 10,000, maybe a little bit more than that. So they're going to fly the approach to 28 right, and the winds are at 200, so that's 80 degrees, so almost a complete crosswind, almost 90 degrees off, and gusting to 36. Now, on the airplane that I fly, since Acme treats crosswind limitations as limits, not guidelines, we would not even be able. Well, this is an emergency. We would probably have landed anyway, even though it's out of our limits. I believe the way United treats demonstrated crosswinds when they do the certification of the airplane as a demonstrated crosswind that they encountered, and not as a limit as Acme does. So they were perfectly legal. And again, because it's an emergency situation, the captain has the authority to do anything that he or she deems necessary to protect the safety and well-being of the passengers and crew. So just thought I'd throw that little bit of audio in regarding the United 1676 flight encountering the severe turbulence. And again, I'll have a link in the show notes if you want to listen to more of that. Okay, so let's move on with some more feedback. This time we have some from Tom.
Hi, Captain Jeff. This is Captain Tom. I was once an airline pilot myself, though I've left that side of the business for the corporate side. And I wanted to say, great show. Listening to you reminds me so much of my time spent in 121, where I had a ball, but unfortunately my company went out of business. And I actually did spend some time flying under the Acme banner out of Cincinnati, but prior to that was up in Boston and Dulles and Chicago. And in any event, had a ball, and I love listening to your show, your demeanor, your behavior, how you talk. Just it's very welcoming. Reminds me of my time in 121. The reason I wanted to write was, or call rather, was to ask two questions. I'm curious as to why you're in the MD-80. It seems like, from what I know about airline pilots, so they and we like to go for the biggest airplane that pays the most money. With your tenure at Acme, it seems as if you could move to something bigger that I'm assuming, though I have really no idea, would pay more. So, is it a lifestyle thing? Is it a seniority thing? Is it a trip thing? Just curious as to what keeps you in the MD-80, assuming that you have the option to go to a different airplane. Not that there's anything wrong with the MD-80, just curious. The second question that I have is, what are you seeing today as attitudes in the cockpit? I can remember when I was in the 121 world and things were good, attitudes were good. It was more people were enjoyable to fly with. But when things got challenging, the negativity seemed to creep into the cockpit, and I really don't miss that at all. But with the airline world going up and down, just wondering what you're seeing today in the cockpit. Are people generally happy, the other pilots that you're flying with, or are they content, or are they maybe not so much so? Curious what you're seeing. And finally, if you make it out to Phoenix, I do see the MD-80 parked out in Phoenix. Look me up, and I'll take you to Four Peaks Brewery. It's a local brewery that I think you'd enjoy very much. And so thank you, Captain Jeff. Great show. Enjoy it very much. This is Captain Tom signing off. Good day.
Thank you, Captain Tom. And great audio, by the way. And so your first question, why the MD-80? And as you suspected, Yes, my seniority at Acme is approximately 20% from the top, which means that at my seniority level, I can fly just about every airplane. I can fly captain on just about every airplane that we have in the fleet, except the 747, Airbus 330, and 767 or 777 and 767-400. But I can fly on the 767 ER category, which is the international category at Acme. And I choose not to because right now where I am on the MD-88, MD-90, I'm about 5-6% from the top in this particular, as a captain based in Atlanta at Acme. If I were to fly the 767 ER, the international category, I would be about the 85th percentile, so about 15% from the bottom, which, as you most likely know, Tom, means being on reserve, not having a regular schedule, flying weekends, flying all the cruddy trips that nobody else wants to fly. And, well, you get the picture. Yeah, the hourly rate is more. Potentially, I could make more money. But practically speaking, the just by picking up one or two extra, like a turnaround or a 2-day trip every month, I pretty much make up for the disparity between the pay rate on the larger wide-body international airplane and my little narrow-body Mad Dog. So what does seniority give me? Well, as you alluded to, lifestyle. I can go through and I can throw out any trip that I don't want to fly. You know, if it has more than 3 or 4 legs per day, that I don't even see that trip. It just gets eliminated from my bucket of trips that I look at. I prefer to fly during the week, not the weekend, so I can bid trips that don't fly the weekends, and I don't fly unless I want to pick up some overtime flying. I'm home for holidays and birthdays and concerts and recitals and all those things that you want to be there for as a dad, if you can be. And seniority gives me that opportunity. As things start accelerating here in the future, as far as retirements off the top end of the list, and we start moving forward or moving up, and my seniority improves on the bigger airplanes with the higher pay rates, then I'll probably make the move at that point. But right now I'm very content with flying narrow-body domestic, staying pretty much in the same time zone most of the time, and flying during the week, etc. Attitudes. Well, again, you nailed it. Just as you experienced when you were flying Part 121, that's the same story with my airline. Now, right now, if you take a snapshot, attitudes are good because our company is doing well financially. It's kind of the leader out there in the major legacy carriers here in the country. And all the metrics are good. We just, signed a contract not long ago, and it was an improvement upon the previous contract. So things are getting better as far as pay and working conditions and that type of thing. So guess what? For the most part, attitudes are good. Now, I've also found, and this has been confirmed by first officers that I fly with, that even though things are good, there are still captains out there that are complaining about everything. And Tom, I'm sure you know, and many of those listening right now have flown with crew members that just enjoy being miserable. I mean, every aspect of their life, the job, their marriage, their children, their friends, their relatives, neighbors, everybody. It's just everything in their life is misery and bad. And whether times are good or times are bad, you're going to fly with people like that. The cool thing about being a captain is that I always get to fly with my favorite captain, me. And I don't like working in an environment where it's negative. I like positive in work environments. And so if I'm flying with somebody who starts complaining about things, I don't give them any feedback at all. I don't play that game. And I think they pick up right away that, oh, Captain Jeff is not going to, poor mouth and bad mouth the company and whatever else. He's going to try to keep everything positive, and that's the way I like it. So I think a lot of it has to do with, the captain setting the tone for the crew, part of cockpit resource management, I believe. And so, if things start going the other direction, as they have, I've seen it several times in my 25-year career at the airlines, we just try to, carry on and do the best we can and try not to drag each other down by, being negative. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, I was just listening to some plumbing sounds in my house. I am in my basement. For those of you listening, if you're watching the video, then it's quite obvious that I'm in my my broadcast studio at the APG headquarters building in Roswell. But so I'm not able to control all the sound. Although you'd think that 25 minutes before midnight things would be settling down a little bit in my house. But I think my daughter just got back from babysitting, and there's some water sounds going on upstairs. Okay, so and back to your feedback, Tom. The third thing you mentioned was Phoenix, and that you see occasionally the Mad Dog parked there with Acme colors. And yes, we do fly into Phoenix. I've flown in there many, many times. It's been a few years since I've been to Phoenix. We fly the Mad Dog not only at the Atlanta crew base, but many of our other crew bases. We have the MD-88, MD-90 flying, or actual pilots based there. And they are the ones that tend to head out more, do more of the flying out west and have Phoenix layovers. As far as I know, I don't think we have any based in Atlanta layovers that lay over in Phoenix. Hope that makes sense. Unless maybe we have one that's one of the red-eye, all-nighter flights, and I don't do those if I can help it. But if it ever changes, Tom, and I get out there for a layover, I look forward to joining you for the Four Peaks Brewery. Sounds like a good place to go. So, again, thanks for your great feedback, Tom. Appreciate it. Keep listening. Keep sending feedback. Hope I answered all your questions. Let's keep rolling here with some more audio feedback. This time it is Rob.
Hi, Captain Jeff. It's Rob here from the UK. I've not done any voice feedback for a while. Been meaning to for at least the last few weeks. I've certainly still been listening in and enjoying your shows as usual. My intentions for this feedback were to sort of help this chap. I think it was in Airline Pilot Guy 99, I think, the guy who was looking for information or recommendations for flight schools in Western Europe and the UK. I can certainly help him there. There's three major sort of ab initio programs that people look at when they're looking at flight training in England. Anyway, this is from our perspective here. And those major schools are Flight Training Europe, which is a decent school based in Spain, I think, in a place called Jerez. I can't speak Spanish, and my Spanish pronunciation is appalling, so I apologise for that. It's spelt Jerez, so however you pronounce that. I'm pretty sure you pronounce it with an H sound. So yeah, that's the first school. It's known as FTE, and they're really good. The place where they're situated is quite isolated as well. So students that go there to study, they tend to get on with their work because there's less sort of attractions around to distract them. It's in a place that has, amazing sort of VFR weather, for most of the year around. And they have one of the most amazing records for achieving above 90% passes on the ATPL ground school course, which is obviously a ground school aspect of the professional license. Yes, I think, in fact, actually, that reminds me, I think you questioned yourself, Jeff, the final letter of ATPL, the professional license in Europe, what that stands for. It stands for Air Transport Pilot License, I'm pretty sure. So, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And EASA, they basically replace what was known as the JAA. And it's basically, as in Europe we have the European Union, it's the same kind of thing with the aviation authorities. It's, each country, like France, Germany, England, the UK, we all have our own sort of aviation authorities, and we have a main authority, which is now EASA, or ESA, or however you say it. But it was previously known as the Joint Aviation, I think, Authority. So I really can't remember. But anyway, I digress. Back onto the schools. Another two good schools, both based in the UK. This one in Bournemouth and Southampton. It's called CTC Aviation. Anybody who's thought about becoming a pilot in Europe must have seen their advertisements. I'm pretty sure they're now actually looking to branch into North America. I saw something recently, so you guys could be hearing about them soon too. They've got a very good track record of placing students with airlines after they finish their training. I personally know somebody who's now flying for a well-known budget airline in the UK who went through their training and ended up with a job in the right-hand seat of a jet. The final school, the third one, is Oxford Aviation. I'm not 100% on what they're calling themselves these days, but those two words are enough to find them online. They're also known really well. They've got an amazing reputation, probably the best. And I think, don't quote me on this, but I think when British Airways were doing their own sort of ab initio training, I think they put people with Oxford. Certainly the British Airways Future Pilot scheme that's been running over the last few years intermittently, I think if you pass the selection process with them, they give you a choice of those three schools that I've just mentioned: FTE, CTC Aviation, and Oxford Aviation. So that goes to show how sort of highly acclaimed those schools are. So that's my advice. I certainly recommend researching those schools thoroughly. They'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. And certainly you won't be on your own. There's plenty of other students at those schools who come from all around the world. So go check them out, and I wish you all the best in the future with your training. And again, thanks to you, Jeff, for your amazing show, which I listen to every week. And I'll bid you all farewell. Goodbye.
Thank you, Rob, for your great audio feedback and those great recommendations, FTE, CTC, and Oxford Aviation. And clarification on the pronunciation of EASA. That sounds much better than whatever I was saying. The EASA, formerly the JAA. And ATPL license. That makes sense. Thank you, Rob, for straightening me out. Man, I'm tired on that. And speaking of CTC, we have some audio feedback from somebody who has just accepted there. Let's listen to Mitch.
Hi, Captain Jeff. It's Mitch here. You may remember me from episode 102, where you was very kind and created almost a podcast episode around young pilots and aspiring pilots, and what advice you gave to get there. As you know, it has taken me some time to get back to you, and I do apologise for that. My CTC assessment was on the 5th of February. It's now the 9th where I'm responding to you, but my phone has just been inundated with texts, calls from friends, which has been very overwhelming. So yes, I actually found out on the 6th, the 6th of February, one day after my assessment, that I'd been successful with CTC, and they offered me a position on their cadet program. So I was one of the lucky 1 in 6 who get a placement, the one in one of the 2,000 cadets a year that they take on board to train and become a commercial airline pilot. So again, I just wanted to really say thank you for your sort of advice and support. And if there are any aspiring commercial pilots that are out there, I'll be more than happy to share, I suppose, what I see fit preparation and the preparation route that I took to equip myself best for that assessment day. And you can also follow me at mitchmiller.blogspot.co.uk, and I'll be sharing my progress as I progress through the CTC cadet program, where I begin my induction in May. So a few months yet, but there's a lot of administration paperwork to go and to prepare for that, including the financing. So yes, thank you very much, Captain Jeff. Clear skies, tailwinds, and homebrew all round. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mitch. And we look forward to following your journey, your progress at the CTC training program. And as Mitch mentioned, his blog entitled Chasing My Dream, it can be found by going over to mitchmiller.blogspot.co.uk. And so far as I can tell, there's only one post started on the February 11th. And as he just mentioned in his audio feedback here, he will not be starting CTC until May. So likely we won't hear or see much action here in the blog until he gets going with the training. And I hope that you'll be able to keep up with doing blog posts and also, doing well with your training at CTC, Mitch. And at the very least, maybe occasionally send us some audio feedback, or maybe I can contact you and we can do a Skype interview or something like that. You can tell us what's going on with everything there at CTC. I'm sure that a lot of folks listening to the podcast would love to hear and kind of live the training experience through, vicariously through you. So, with that said, the link for that will be in the show notes. Again, Mitch Miller's Chasing My Dream blog. All right, let's go back here and make sure I haven't missed anything yet. Nope. And guess what? More audio feedback, this time from Harry.
Hi, Captain Jeff. My name is Harry Nicken from the Netherlands. I'm really enjoying your podcast, and I have a question about window wipers. I once experienced the breakdown of the window wipers on my car. I immediately lost vision, had to pull over and stop the car, plus spent the night with the whole family in a local hotel. And since then I use on my windows stuff like Rain-X or Aquapel that contain polydimethyl siloxane that binds to glass. Do planes use that stuff too? And did you ever experience broken window wipers on a flight? Since you cannot pull over in mid-air, do you have a contingency plan in place? I wish you safe flights and lots more podcasts. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Harry, and thanks for your feedback regarding window wipers, or what we refer to them over here in the United States as windshield wipers. And on the airplane, I think we call them windshield wipers as well, or just wipers. And most airplanes that I've flown, transport category airplanes that I've flown, actually have the wipers. One airplane that I flew, the C-141B Starlifter in the Air Force, actually didn't have wipers but had a system that used the bleed air, the pneumatic air from the compressor sections of the engines, which is a very hot, very high pressure air. They actually piped it through some ducting and directed the hot air actually on the outside of the aircraft to blow against the windshield or windscreen. And that was it was such high velocity air that it was able to keep the rain off the windshield. Worked pretty well, actually. And you mentioned something about rain repellent or Rain-X or Aquapel, how you can apply that to your automotive windshield, and it uses a chemical property to keep the water from beading, or I guess it kind of beads up the water, and it basically makes it much easier to see through your windshield. And it works well in combination with your window wipers, but it also helps if your wiper is broken to continue to allow you to see through your windshield. Do we have anything like that in the airplane? We used to use something called rain repellent. I forgot exactly what the trade name is for the substance, but it was a very very toxic substance that so much so, in fact, they at some point early on in my career, so probably about 20 to 25 years ago, started capping the tanks with the rain repellent, actually removing the rain repellent tanks from inside of the cockpit is where it was stored, and through some piping would go through and would spray something on the outside of the window. Unfortunately, there were times that this very highly toxic fluid, this rain repellent fluid, would leak inside the cockpit, and apparently it was so dangerous that I'm not sure what authority decided to basically outlaw its use, but very early on in my career at Acme, I noticed that most of these rain repellent systems were being deactivated. So now we just have wipers. And have I had a wiper that has broken? Yeah. Sometimes, one will go and the other one will get stuck. Sometimes the blade itself will, maybe deteriorate to the point that it's not doing any good. So yeah, I've experienced personally a couple times windshield wipers or window wipers that were not working. If it's a situation where neither pilot can see through the windscreen to land safely, then you go somewhere where it's not raining so you can see. But if it's a situation where my windshield wiper is broken, but the first officer's is working fine and he can see to land the airplane, then I would, I'd say, okay, now it's your leg, your flight, your segment, and you have the landing. And then, of course, by the time you pull off the runway, unless it's really, really raining badly, whether you have a wiper or not, you usually have sufficient visual cues to taxi to the apron and the gate. Although I do remember one time at night, raining, going into Newark, and it was so bad I almost had to stop the airplane and just have somebody come out, connect a tug, and pull us into the gate because there were so many reflections from all the lights and the rain on the windscreen, and it was just a mess. So I hope that answers your questions, Harry. And again, keep listening and send in more feedback in the future. Let's see, we've been going almost an hour, and I'm thinking that this may be the last bit of feedback that I tackle. Boy, I'm getting further and further behind. I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying, though. But I'm getting pretty tired here. It's approaching midnight. And as I mentioned earlier, I got up at 3 o'clock this morning, so I've been up almost, 21 hours now. So I'd like to get a little sleep. This is from Ryan Padilla, and he said, "Hi, I'm Ryan from Orlando. Hope everything is going well for you." Oh, by the way, Ryan, I don't know if you've heard, by now perhaps you've heard, on Tuesday of next week, so hopefully you'll actually listen to this before Tuesday, having a airline pilot guy get together at the Brick House Tavern and Tap on International Drive. So if you're available, starting around 5 o'clock or so for a couple hours, hang out with some fellow aviation enthusiasts, enjoy some good appetizers or whatever you want to buy there for eating, and some great beer if you are so inclined. And so look forward to meeting you in person. So let's go on with this feedback. I have 2 questions for you. First, how far in advance do you know your flying schedule? Let me answer that one first before I forget, because sometimes I'll read all these questions and I'll forget. Basically, bidding starts, let's just use for instance, April. Approximately the 5th of March, the schedules will be released by marketing and operations with the trips that are available on various dates during the month of April. The bidding period closes on the 11th of the month, so March 11th. By 1800 Eastern Time, the bids will close, which means that if I have to put in my requests before that time. And then anywhere from a couple days after that point to perhaps a week later, the results will be revealed. So I'd say on average around the 15th, 16th, 17th of the month previous to the one you're bidding for, you actually know at least your initial schedule. So for April, I should know my initial trip awards by mid-March. So approximately a couple weeks before the month begins, you have some idea of what you may be doing. Now, if you're on reserve, of course, you don't know what you're going to be doing, but you're going to know what days you have off. Going on, second question from Ryan. He was watching a video on safe takeoffs, and a rule of thumb was that if a pilot does not have 70% of takeoff speed by half of the runway, then the takeoff must be aborted. My question is, what protocol does Acme want their pilots to follow in order to perform a safe takeoff? Looking forward to hearing your answer. Thank you. Keep up the good work. Tailwinds and blue skies. Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated for Part 121 carriers. The FAA has FARs, Federal Aviation Regulations, that stipulate how you calculate takeoff performance. Now at Acme, we, well, first of all, let me tell you what the FARs include. The takeoff performance, actually we do everything by takeoff performance limit weights. And the takeoff performance limit weights required by the FARs include the climb limit weight, obstacle clearance limit weight, and field length limit weight, which includes tire speed and brake energy limits. Now, the climb limit weight assures that a specified gradient can be maintained after liftoff in still air conditions. The obstacle clearance limit weight assures that all obstacles along the intended flight path can be cleared with one engine inoperative. And the field length limit weight is the most restrictive weight, resulting from the following runway length requirements. Okay, so here we go. The distance required to accelerate with all your engines experience an engine failure, one engine failure, within 1 second of your V1 speed, which is your decision speed, and being able to continue the takeoff to a height of 35 feet above the runway at V2 speed. So that's what they call the accelerate go distance. The other requirement, or another requirement, is the distance required to accelerate with all engines, recognize an event within 1 second of V1, initiate the stopping maneuver, and stop within the confines of the runway. and that's called the accelerate stop distance. And finally, 1.15 times the all-engine takeoff distance required to reach a point 35 feet above the runway. Now, usually that's only limiting for 4-engine aircraft. So, ACME presents the pilots, with a climb limit weight as a separate entry on the weight data record, which is our performance data that we receive via our ACARS usually, unless the ACARS is not working, and then we can get it as a printout from the gate agent, or we also have some procedures where we can get the critical data necessary for a safe takeoff via radio. But usually, just before or sometimes just after we initiate pushback, we'll get a little notification chime that indicates that we're receiving our weight data record from our ACAR system. And then we print it out, and then we analyze the data, and then enter the appropriate speeds and flap settings, center of gravity settings, etc., power settings. And on this piece of paper, it has basically two columns. Well, the runway column, actually it'll break down in individual runways in use. It'll have a climb limit weight and a runway allowable weight for each of these different power settings. And so you know what your actual weight is of the airplane. So you kind of compare your actual weight with these performance weights. As I mentioned before, usually the limiting weight is not the climb limit weight unless you're out in the mountainous areas. The runway allowable weight is usually the most limiting factor. And then you see what your weight is and what power setting that you can use, reduced power preferably, so that you reduce the wear and tear on the engines. And then once you see that your weight is less than the performance limiting weight, then you select that power setting, and then you put in the airspeeds for V1, V2 rotate, or V1 rotate, V2 speeds in your airspeed bugs on your airspeed indicator. And also we put that in our flight management computer. And then off we go. And of course we set in all the, it tells you whether you're going to be a flaps 11 takeoff, a flaps 18 takeoff, a flaps 5 takeoff, and what else? Center of gravity, or CG, and the stabilizer trim setting. So those are the critical things involved with the weight and balance data that we receive. Now, where does this all come from? Well, engineering has made all these calculations based on data from the aircraft manufacturer. And it's always pretty conservative. So you can be assured that if you are below the performance limit weight for that particular runway and those conditions, that you will be safe to operate. And then, the balance field length comes into play. And you know that if you've made the decision to stop the takeoff before or within 1 second of reaching the V1 speed, you'll be able to stop the airplane on the remaining runway. By the way, that does not account for, those calculations do not account for the use of reverse thrust in dry conditions. It's just based on maximum manual braking. And now if they're using data for a wet runway or cluttered runway, like ice, snow, that kind of thing, then I believe reverse thrust is included in the calculation. So I hope that wasn't a gobbledygook bunch of information that nobody really understands, or perhaps my presentation of it was a little hard to understand. But that's basically, we don't use the rule of thumb, by 70%, we have to attain our takeoff speed or whatever. No, I'm sure that it probably works out to be something like that, but our calculations use weights, performance weights, and as long as we are at or below that weight, the actual weight, then we can use that particular power setting for takeoff and know that we're going to be safe, whether we stop the takeoff or continue a takeoff past the V1 decision speed, and we'll know that we'll be able to reach, make a safe takeoff with just one engine operating. Okay, so there we go. Well, you know what? I'll just do quickly a little bit more, see if we can get some short pieces of feedback in. That'll cut down on the number of things that I have to talk about on the next episode. Korhan from Turkey says, in one of the past episodes, the subject was highways built for airplanes to take off and land. And then he gave me a link to F-18 pilots taking off from a highway. So I'll have that in the show notes. F-18s taking off and landing on a highway in 2011. Brent said, just wanted to say that I enjoy your podcast as a commercial rated pilot and a frequent business traveler, over 200,000 miles a year. Wow. Brent, fun fact. Did you know that you can play your podcast at 1.5 speed and it sounds great? So I guess I'm not talking fast enough. Also, did you know that you can skip the first 30 minutes and not miss anything? What are you saying? I shouldn't do the first 30 minutes of my show? And not miss anything? So apparently Brent doesn't care about my private life, nor does he care about anything in the news, which is the first 30 minutes usually. And anyway, so thank you for your feedback, Brent. Let's see. Josh writes, I recently stumbled onto your podcast. Thank you for stumbling, Josh. And he says he loves it. Ever since my first airplane ride in a Boeing 717, I've been obsessed with all things aviation. I'm currently a freshman attending college to be a civil engineer, but my dream is to become an airline pilot. It's a good dream to have, I'd say, Josh. My parents are opposed to this idea because of the price of schooling, as well as hearing stories about the regional pilot life. How do I convince my parents to let me follow my dream? I know in your latest video you talk about the airline pilot shortage, but what other arguments can I use to defend my reasoning for being a pilot? Keep up the great work. God bless, Josh. Well, Josh, it really depends on how badly you want the job or career of being an airline pilot. And if you want it badly enough, you know what? Even if your parents don't back you and you have to get, maybe it's a funding thing, a financial thing. Maybe you need them to basically fund your schooling and training. And if that's the case, and you want it badly enough, you just have to take the risk of offending your parents and doing it anyway. Now, they do make some good points. The cost of schooling and getting all your licenses and certifications is expensive, and you will encounter debt. And the life of a regional airline pilot as a first officer, especially that first year, is you don't make a lot of money, to put it plainly. Not at all. How quickly will you recover that money and be able to pay back all that debt? I don't know. Don't have the crystal ball. I think most people would say that there's a much better chance of you doing that in a shorter period of time now and in the next 5, 10, 15 years than in previous decades. But again, I'm not going to recommend you do one thing or another. It's just you got to do with what's in your heart, and what I can tell you to tell your parents that's going to make them say, hey, okay, let's go for it. Let's spend a lot of money on your schooling and training. I don't have any magic words. Sorry, I don't. I don't have any advice to give you other than, do whatever you think is the right thing for you to do, even if it means hardship on your part. That's the best I can do. So, Josh, thanks for watching the video and listening to the audio and sending in feedback and all that. Let us know what your decision is, and would like to hear about your journey. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stop now. I think that that's a good place to. just a reminder, the Brightline bag that I'm using. By the way, that didn't sound good. I'm seeing more and more pilots with this Brightline bag. This one happens to be the, I think they call it the B10 configuration. It's a flexible bag system where you can add or subtract. In fact, my first officer that I just flew this recent trip with had this bag, but it didn't have this back section, just had the front section. And I've seen a lot of guys with just the front section of the Brightline bag, which is the key part of the bag. I just added this extra part to put my laptop computer and iPad. And also I have a center section here that I can zip in between the two sections that I already showed you to expand the carrying capability even more, although it tends to be a pretty darn big bag when you do that. But my point is that if you're interested in getting one of these flight gear bags yourself, and as I said, I'm seeing more and more professional airline pilots carrying these bags, and they probably paid full price, but you don't have to. You can go to Brightline. By the way, I don't get anything for this. They gave me a discount when I purchased this bag setup, but they're not paying me anything, just as a full disclosure to you. I just love the bag, and so if I like something, I'm going to tell you about it. And if you want to get one of these bags for yourself, head over to brightlinebags.com, and when you check out, make sure you use the promotional code, the discount code, Airline Pilot Guy, all one word, Airline Pilot Guy. Gives you 10% off. And I'm pretty sure that promo code is going to work for a little while. So thank you for doing that. Or Brightline Bags thanks you for using the code. And that code, it works both ways. It gives you something off, 10%, and it also lets them know, gives them a metric to see that people are actually, taking advantage of the offer and hearing it from the Airline Pilot Guy show. So there you have that. What else? Talked about the Audible trial. If you're interested in, trying audible.com and audiobooks, you can get a 30-day free trial and one free audiobook download. If you are already an audible.com subscriber and you have some suggestions for the listeners, please send me that information. That'll help me. Yeah, that's about it. As I mentioned, tomorrow after I do the other podcast that I do on the weekend, I'm heading to Southern California to visit family out west, and then I'll be back on Monday, and I'll be able to change out all the dirty laundry and put in clean and head out again for my 4-day trip next week. And remember, Tuesday, the 25th of February, I'll be at the Brick House Tavern and Tap on International Drive around 5 o'clock. I'll probably get there a little bit before that. Look forward to meeting you if you're in the Orlando area and you can spare the time. And finally, you know how you can listen to me. You can go to airlinepilotguy.com. You can subscribe via iTunes. And by the way, thank you for all of you who have taken the time to write a review for the podcast on iTunes. And I didn't mention, I did on my Facebook page, Carlos Stebbings. You've heard Carl Stebbings many times sending audio feedback into the show. He started a podcast with a friend named Simon, and they have a podcast called Plain Talking UK. And I was invited to guest host with Carlos last week. And so check that out if you want to listen to his excellent podcast, and yours truly as his guest host. Check it out. I'll have a link in the show notes to that. Stitcher Radio, I'm there. TuneIn Radio, if you have the TuneIn Radio app, I'm now on there, in their directory. Finally, it's time to say goodbye. Hope you have a great weekend and a great week. Look forward to putting out another episode next week In the meantime, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Good day.